Ladies and gentlemen, it is a great pleasure for me to welcome you today to the kick-off event of a new digital series of events hosted by the Friedrich-Naumann-Stiftung for Freedom. In 12 episodes, we want to look at how Russia's neighboring countries reacted to the full-scale attack on Ukraine almost exactly 1 year ago. What political changes occurred in these states in relation to their large neighbor Russia? How was the Russian war of aggression perceived by the citizens? This is what we want to learn from well-known experts. Today, we look at the Baltic States. Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania belonged to the Soviet Union from 1940 and became sovereign again in 1991. Since then, they have been working closely with their Western neighbors, and thanks to major economic and social advances, the Baltic states were admitted to the European Union and the NATO in 2004. Ladies and gentlemen, I am very pleased that we were able to recruit Ms. Anett Numa as an expert for this exciting region. She is head of government relations and communications in Accelerate Estonia. Accelerate Estonia is Estonia's governmental innovation lab. It is, to put it differently, a place to create new ideas and a lab to see what happens if one just tries to realize them. This event will be moderated by my valued colleague, Dr. Detmar Doering. He is project director, Central Europe and the Baltic States of the Friedrich-Naumann Foundation for Freedom. His office is located in Prague, and that is where we find him now. Dear Mr. Doering, I am very pleased to see you and to give you the floor.
Thank you very much for the introduction. It's a great pleasure to take part in this event. The topic, we don't need any explanation for this, is most important. And I'd like to begin with the first question, just a general question, Mrs. Numa. I think German politics was rather taken by surprise, and it took some time, and maybe we haven't even fully succeeded now that Germany finds its position towards the problem. As we have heard, Estonia had been occupied by the Soviet Union and over centuries before that by Russia. So maybe they had a more realistic expectation all the way even before. So the general question, how did Estonia as a neighboring country of Russia react to the invasion 1 year ago?
First of all, thanks for having me here. And if I may jump back to the 24th of February 2022, it is a very special day for us, not just 24th of February 2022, but 24th of February in general. Because if people know the history, that was the year when Estonia actually is celebrating its Independence Day. So I remember very, very clearly that day. I was celebrating, like as every year, this wonderful Independence Day at my parents'. But as I was working in a defense ministry a year ago, I knew exactly what was going to happen. So it really didn't come as a surprise to anybody here. We already had plenty of information that this is going to happen. It was just a matter of when it's going to happen. There wasn't a question already at the end of 2021 whether it's going to happen or no. The question was when it's going to happen. So I wouldn't say that like somebody here would have been surprised, because like you said, for Germany, they were very realistic and thinking like, why should Russia go on this kind of full scale war? But we knew exactly what they're eager to do and what they were planning to do for a long time. Estonian, also the defense ministry and defense forces were already sending Ukraine also help before the war happened. So we were preparing for this at least a half a year before everything happens, because we had the information already that this is something that they have on a table. We've been sharing this information with our allies with so many different countries as well. Again, everybody were kind of naive and thinking, no, I mean, maybe we're just thinking like too crazy here, like it's not going to happen. Maybe we can stop them to doing this kind of things. We as Estonia, like as you said before, we were occupied by Soviet Union for not just once, but like a couple of times, and for so many years. So we knew what they're capable for. And this is why we never thought that they're just choking around and not going to do anything. That was very clear for quite some time already that this is going to happen. So no surprise from our side, and it was one of the saddest 24th of February for me that I can remember. I didn't slept a minute that day, so it was like at least like 48 hours of being awake, because we were really like, also like you can imagine, like working in a defense ministry during that period wasn't the easiest thing to do.
Well, when people think of Estonia, there's always the first word that will pop up in the mind bubble is digitalization. Probably foreigners are very much boring because that's always the first thing they want to talk about, at least people who come for political reasons. I will be no exception now, because we haven't mentioned it, just a few days before you still were advisor on the topic of cyber warfare at the defense ministry. So cyber warfare is your topic, and we all expect that Estonia's strength, even in these times, is advanced digitalization. And there was this Russian cyber attack of 2007 against Estonia's infrastructure, and this led to increased efforts to protect yourself against large-scale cyber warfare. In fact, Estonia became a pioneer country within NATO, one can say so. So Estonia had a lot of experience on the day when the Russian attack happened. Many US tech companies like Microsoft, and in the beginning Elon Musk, he's about to stop this now, got a lot of publicity, and they made a lot of publicity for assisting Ukraine in digital matters in this war. But surely I would guess Estonia was not that inactive. So how much are you allowed to tell us about this?
Even if I don't work at the defense ministry, there is still very limited information I can share you guys with. But what I can tell you is that we've been supporting Ukraine not just from 24th of February 2022, but we have been supporting Ukraine since a long time, because the war in cyberspace in Ukraine has been happening already from the years of 2015, or even going back to 2014. Because if you guys remember, like 2015, Russia managed to even like shut down the entire city in Ukraine by a cyber attack, so that Ukraine really wasn't there yet with their capabilities. And since that time, Estonian, the companies, the government, our cyber defense forces, our Ministry of Defense, our Ministry of Economic Affairs, we've been supporting them massively with so many different projects, providing courses and really helping them with capabilities. So actually, it was just a month before the war started. In January, some of my colleagues were physically in Ukraine again for a visit for like cyber support. So we've been working with Ukrainians for quite some time already, and what we can say today that this all has paid off, and I can honestly say, like you also said, that like some bigger US technology companies have been supporting Ukraine as well, and we wouldn't hear a single thing from Ukraine if they wouldn't help them, because also, if you think about like most of their like the cables, the actual cables, the infrastructure of providing internet connection is also shut down. But why we don't hear about this is because they are still connected to the world thanks to the Starlink. So this is also very essential. And then we could have another 1 hour discussion about like why should we also protect the space in terms of cybersecurity, because that's where the connection is coming from. So definitely the help that Ukraine is also getting right now from the cyber domain sector is very big, and I can't go into the details, but I can tell you that we've been working with them hands in hands for very, very long time. And besides this, it was just few days after 24th of February last year, we also started the process of getting Ukraine as a member of the NATO Cybersecurity Center of Excellence that is based here and physically in Tallinn, where all the NATO countries are. And we also made like a voting through the steering committee through the online method. So in one single week, we managed to get all the NATO countries supporting Ukraine to become a member of our NATO CCD-COE. And when I left the ministry last week, we were very close to finalizing the final contract already. So I'm hoping that in a couple of months, if my colleagues continue this work, we can also raise the Ukrainian flag at the NATO Center of Excellence here, because they are the ones that are having the very best experience when it comes to facing a real war in cyberspace. But we can get to that also in details, what is actually happening in Ukraine right now. But let's just maybe conclude that side. We really do work closely with them, and it's not just us helping them right now. It's also both ways, because we're also able to learn so much from Ukrainians today.
Okay, it was after 2017 when you prepared yourself for this. It was seen that this is a new generation of war in the future, even more important than conventional warfare. Perhaps we won't see tanks anymore and soldiers marching. However, it seems that apart from local accidents where it happened, cyber warfare hasn't played such a role in the war so far. Or do I get it somehow wrong? It looks like a war fought by lines of 60 kilometers of tanks and lorries. Is it that important, or do we underestimate it? Is there more going on?
There is way more going on, and every time that somebody tells me the sentence like there is not really anything happening in cyberspace, I cannot agree with this. Again, I can't tell you where the information where I know this from, but also which is if it comes to media, I feel like talking about like the cyber war right now is not as sexy as covering the actual like what's happening in a military domain, which is totally okay because people are dying. But what we heard from some of our Ukrainian also colleagues there, they said to us that, and if we jump again back to last year in January, a year ago, Russia started attacks against Ukraine before the war. If you remember, that was on the news. So they also attacked Ukraine with the DDoS attacks, which are the most simple ones. So there were just kind of these signs and like government pages, like in Russian language, like some very bad words about Ukraine. And they kind of took over the web pages with the DDoS attacks, and it was down for some time, which was actually also partly done together with China, who we can't underestimate either. And this is where it all started. But as I said, we've been working with Ukraine for so long time so that they have been capable for protecting themselves way better than, like I said, in 2015 when they managed to shut down the entire city. It's not going to happen anymore because Ukrainian resilience is way higher and their capabilities than it used to be before. And that's the reason why we don't hear about this in media, which doesn't mean that there is nothing happening. So it's also like even inside here in Estonia, when you have to explain to the higher, like the management boards or, I mean, in companies or again, decision makers in the public sector, why cyber is important, they're saying, but there is nothing happening. But the thing is like when it's nothing happening in cyberspace, that doesn't mean that on a background, there is nothing happening. It just shows that our resilience is way better and we really have raised our capabilities. So really what they tried to do back in January and early February was also to really massively attack Ukraine in cyberspace, which they failed. They failed big time. And that is one of the reasons why they started to really, again, have the forces like the army coming in to Ukraine physically, because they didn't manage to do that. Because if you think about as being President Putin, would it be easier for you not to harm anybody physically as the Russian soldiers and to do something massive in cyberspace? Or are you just kind of like, it's way cheaper, it's way easier for any kind of like the crazy leader who thinks that they have the right to attack the other country, to use the methods that are, first of all, way cheaper and also easier to use. But they failed big time because again, the Ukrainian capabilities were way over that. So of course, since then, it has been integrated still to the usual military domains as well. So I would say cyber is always included in the other domains of like using different methods. When it comes to the hybrid ones, cyber, like also like the information operations, which is part of that. Early warnings, that's where people get the information, and it's tons of things. So the sentence that there's not much going on in cyberspace is definitely not true, because we see the other picture, and there is very a lot of things happening there, and if you even think about like for like Russia to plan things ahead and to make smarter decisions, cyber is one of the tools that they can use right now. So of course, both ways, it goes the same for Ukrainians, and I think you guys also have heard about these things already. Also, media where like the Russian soldiers have been stupid enough to download the dating applications on the phone, and then you can see by the GPS where everybody are. And again, this is a cyber tool, so you see where they are, and then Ukrainians have been attacking these kind of places. So it's right now, it's not the separate domain that we're talking about, but it's integrated to the usual military.
So actually, it's all not really what we see. What we see is not what it really is. Makes you think that this is so. But that leads me to another question. I mean, we have so far discussed, in a way, the aspects of cyber war with respect to the destruction of infrastructure, or to the direct military, physical military confrontation. But cyber warfare today is increasingly also a fight over minds and soul of the citizens. And it seems that Russians are increasingly, they seem to focus on digital disinformation campaigns, aiming at changing voters' perceptions and attitudes towards the Ukraine. They tried very hard, for instance, at the moment, I think in Slovakia, but obviously in Estonia, the Russian minority is a target for such campaigns that could undermine the support for the Ukraine. But there are other examples. It's not just this minority. So is Estonia, in the context of the war today, also more effective in combating this particular threat than others do?
Well, definitely, and we know exactly what we are really facing, and the threat that is coming from that direction. And if you think about like in Estonia, we have approximately 20% of our people who live here have the Russian passport or the background from there. So definitely, this is something that really does influence us in that perspective as well. We have the elections coming just around the corner. We have less than a month to go for our next parliamentary elections, and we already see tons of different also campaigns in cyberspace trying to influence people. Estonia is voting online. Just think about this. Last time, 50% of our citizens also casted their vote online. How much of a risk we are that Russia is really feeling that they can, because when it comes to using the cyber, like the cyber tools, it's about like also influencing our democracy and our democratic systems. So this is definitely something very like something that they really want to do in a way. But of course, we've been preparing for this for a long time, since you already brought it up before. Since 2007, Estonia has been under different attacks coming from Russia. And we have also done like Ukraine a massive job in order to raise our awareness, every citizen awareness, every public servant awareness. We've been educating our politicians how to be smarter in cyberspace, not to talk about any other just civilians or people working in the military sector. So it's all about just the education and being prepared, because the best thing that one can do is to be prepared, because there is not a single system that could not be hacked. I know it might sound sad to hear for somebody like thinking like it really like not a single way of technology that couldn't be hacked. Then I can say that yes, so every single system could be hacked, but you can do enough preparations in order to avoid these attacks and to really like resist the attacks or discover them as early as possible, so that we wouldn't have to do the thing like switching ourselves just off from the internet, but really protecting us and providing still services to our citizens, because this is what our democracy is depending on. But we are really expecting to see way more activeness in cyberspace now in a couple of weeks, I would say. And our people who work in the cyber sector are right now working days and nights in order to make sure that it's quiet and they can discover when there would be something happening. And we continue doing different campaigns for the citizens, saying that please be aware that right now there might be more cases like this. And you know, again, like I said about like influencing the democracy. So their goal is to kind of lose the trust again, like towards the government. Because if you use, like, for example, cyber attacks in order to take down the government portals, it kind of provides so much confusion in the society. Or what they did in 2007 and tried to do also last year in August was that they also tried to attack the media portals, so that if you go and try to read the news, get your information from somewhere, and you see that the platform is down, you kind of start getting worried. So they use these kind of weakest points that really influence the entire society. And this is what we've been really preparing for. But besides this, the attacks have not just increased against like Estonia or again the other Baltic countries, but they have increased against like everybody. So I had conversations last year with my friends or colleagues from the Ministry of Defense in France, and they even said that even like towards the private sector entities, it has been around 200% of increase of attacks. So since 24th of February, Russians' enemy is not just Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, and Poland, but the Russians' enemy is the rest of the world, meaning the West. So there is no kind of, you know, everybody who is supporting Ukraine today is an enemy of Russia. And this is what we have seen also in cyberspace. When France was facing more attacks coming from China, the same goes for like Denmark, for example, then today they are under the attacks coming from Russia. So that shows that also this kind of threat scale is really shaped since last year. And what we can do is to, again, continue sharing our expertise to each other, our lessons, if something really happens, again, to kind of cover what should we do together, how we could really, because when it comes to organizations like NATO and the EU that we work closest together, I've been always saying that the weakest country, both in EU and NATO, will define how secure the entire NATO system is. So we have to make sure that everybody are on the same level. And that's why we've been really pushing this in order to shape this kind of global policies and to be ready for these attacks to happen in a way.
Yes, in May, in the beginning of March, you have elections. Let's hope that all these, you can thwart all the efforts that you have described. It's, on the whole, I must say, a more alarming picture than one thinks. It's what's going on behind. And I think we can learn quite a lot from Estonia in these matters. Although I think with this respect, there seems to be now increasing awareness. Just a very brief one, because I want to allow at least one of the questions we have already there. How do you like the cooperation with Germany in all this? I mean, Germany had to struggle much more to find its position in all this.
Well, Germany has been Estonian like friend and ally, like again, for a long time. With the cyber defense sector, for example, you are one of our closest partners. Again, can't go into the details, but we do plenty of collaboration in different fields when it comes to especially the defense sector and the cyber defense. Of course, if I could go general, there is still this kind of, I mean, of course, Germany has done an amazing steps that we would never have expected before the war. I mean, your entire defense sector has been shaped because of this. I mean, it's been internally, even if you think about internally in Germany, what has happened in just a year. I got colleagues working in the defense ministry in Germany, and they have said like everything has changed, everything, and that's why also I feel like in the future, as we really have seen now what Russia is capable for, and we do have a common enemy, then there is more and more ways to also just work together. But I can tell you already that that you are one of our 5 most closest partners and allies that we work together with in the defense sector. But should be more in the channel like the digitalization sector, but we try to push Germany as much as possible, and especially in my new role that I just started with, so to really push the innovation also in channel like in the government sector more than it has been working before.
Thanks a lot. I allow one question I have here at the Q&A section. Why the Baltic states are less an incoming point for refugees from Ukraine than Poland or Germany? Bureaucracy, location, peace, economy.
Well, if you actually look at the numbers, because I don't know where that question comes, because we like if you think about per population, per our citizens, like the numbers, Estonia is actually has one of the largest numbers of like the refugees that have came in from Ukraine here. If I'm correct, the number, the unofficial number should be even around 80,000 people. And if you think about, we only have 1.3 million people, how big like percentage this is. And if you think about a country that is just 1.3 million, we cannot accept or like, I mean, there is a limit somewhere. There is a limit somewhere because we are such a small country. We've been doing everything. And I feel like if you look at the numbers for like how much like how many like weapons or just like how much in military sense we've been supporting Ukraine and also accepting them here, the number is actually very, very big. And we've been very flexible of helping them in as many ways as possible. But of course, it very much depends on like if you're a refugee coming from Ukraine, it's not just that you look for a random country to move to. If there is somebody that you know already there, then usually people are like finding an accommodation at their family or friends. So becoming a refugee in country X or the other, there is so many other things. But like I said, 80,000 people in a country that is the same as not even the biggest city in Germany. So there are limits also for us that, I mean, also by the distance, we're pretty small.
Yeah, think of it. I think you have only 100,000 people more than the city of Cologne. So one must not forget. So the resume is Estonia seems to be well prepared to do what's in the capability of such a small country. Small is also the format of these discussions on neighboring Russia. It says it's half an hour, and this is almost gone, so we will have perhaps 1 or 2 minutes overtime. To begin with, thank you, Mrs. Numa, for giving us so many information. I wish we had at least 1 hour format here because I think there's so much to learn, and maybe we find at a later time format where we can discuss this even in greater depth. But the good news is also that this is not the only event in the series of Neighboring Russia. We'll have one every week. Next week, same time, same format. We will discuss the Ukraine war from the perspective of the Nordic countries. Please do not hesitate to take part in this. And also thank you to the audience, which we unfortunately could not see here at Zoom. At least it seems it has attracted quite a lot of people, I have heard, this event. And with this, I wish you a happy and great evening and lots of thinking about what you have heard.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.